some of the first things you would do? I mean, you've talked about doing away with the income tax. Would you do that immediately if you were elected?
I can't do that by myself, but as a commander-in-chief, I could neutralize some of the antagonism in the Middle East. Why are we threatening and ready to spread the war into Iran? Even the Democrats aren't willing to speak out against that. They're saying, don't take any options off the table, even nuclear first strikes against Iran. Now, the Democrats aren't even saying, bring the troops home before 2013. You know, 5 years, they don't expect to bring the troops home from Iraq. Those aren't alternatives. And so I could do that immediately. I'd bring that Navy back. I would bring the troops home from Korea. Let them work out the problem. 50 years is not 55 years. That's plenty of time. They're begging and pleading to just be left alone, and the South and the North would be together within 5 years if we weren't there.
So just basically, again, defend the borders of the United States.
Defend our interests, defend our liberties, and we do not need to be occupying Europe and Japan, Korea, all these countries. We have troops in 130 countries. We have 750 bases around the world. We can't afford it, and it causes trouble for us.
Another question back here at home. You're an obstetrician. You delivered, what, 4,000 babies over the course of your career in medicine. You did not, as I understand it, take Medicare and Medicaid payments from your patients. You either took nothing at all or you negotiated down. Are these programs you would do away with, Medicare, Medicaid? And if so, what would you...
No, but I would have a transition period. Like I said before, I'd cut money from overseas and allow people who are totally dependent to have this care. But I'd let young people get out of Social Security and have them get options to have their own medical care. Because I was raised at a time when medical care was provided by a lot of people, and they had no government programs. And I never saw anybody out in the streets. I worked in a hospital in San Antonio. It was a church hospital, and it was always the lowest charge or nothing, and everybody was taken care of. Today, everything is the maximum charge because everybody's on third-party payments. The government has to pay. And nobody says who's the government, but the government can pay, so everybody gets the biggest bill possible, and everybody gets extra tests. So we have a system now that just encourages very, very expensive medicine, and it diminishes the chances of the poor people to have medical care.
So get the federal government out of medical payments altogether.
Eventually that is the case, but certainly in the transition period, that's not my goal, is to attack those programs. Matter of fact, I'm the only one that offers a way to pay for it. Right now they just add on. The Republicans gives us prescription drug programs, and the Democrats gives you S-chip, and they don't have any money. They're going to print that money. That's all they're going to do. They can't even tax anymore because we're taxed to the hill. So they're going to print the money, create the inflation, and cause the cost of medicine to go up. We're on a foolhardy course that has to be changed.
A couple of other positions I was reading about domestic or social issues. You are pro-gun rights. How would you prevent another Virginia Tech from happening?
I don't think you can, you know, freedom doesn't give you perfection. But, everybody who's responsible for themselves, their house, their household, or their private property should provide the protection. So campuses should provide protection. My complaint about 9/11 was the responsibility didn't fall on the airlines. It fell on the government. And the government said, no guns on the airplane. Pilots weren't allowed to have guns. And the passengers were instructed, never resist a takeover. So we did exactly the opposite thing. The airlines should be responsible, and owners should be responsible. School management people should have responsibility. Most of our plants, say where I am in my district, are chemical plants. They're all protected, not by government. You know, they have their fences and their guards, and they're well protected. So there's nothing wrong with resorting to people assuming that private protection is pretty efficient.
So on schools, there should be security in the public schools as well as on college campuses?
The schools should be responsible, whether it's a private college or if it's a school district, the school district should be responsible.
And on airplanes, you said pilots should be allowed...
the owner of the airplane, yeah. Just like the owner of an armored car makes sure his cargo is safe, the airline should make sure we as passengers are safe.
Abortion. You've said you'd like to make it impossible for the federal government to regulate abortion, which would in effect, I guess, negate Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, it would, because I think that's a state issue.
And then the states would be able to do away with abortion. I mean, in effect, would you like to see abortion banned everywhere, or what's your...
I'd like to ban the federal government intervention in abortion. So since I've only been a federal official, a congressman, and running for the presidency, I say that we should keep our hands out of it. And there are some extreme circumstances that I may not even endorse, but I recognize that we're always arguing about it. But states should deal with it because they're difficult. The more difficult an issue is, the more local the solution ought to be. Once you get into a difficult problem, and then you have one monolithic answer like Roe versus Wade, then you come up with a solution where the courts legislate and allow abortion to be done a minute before birth, and I can get paid for doing one of those. You had a girl, if she throws her baby away, we arrest her for murder. There's something awfully inconsistent about that. And I have so much legal responsibility as a physician. If I do harm to the fetus, I can be sued. So the fetus has legal rights, but we should figure that out at the state level on the extreme circumstances and not legalize abortion at any time during pregnancy, which is essentially what the Supreme Court did.
Prayer in the schools, you would restore it through an amendment to the Constitution?
No, I wouldn't restore it. I would remove the ability of federal courts to prohibit it.
Okay, thank you.
So we should have no laws. Congress shall write no laws. So local people should be able to do what they want.
In wherever they are in their school.
Yeah, that's right.
Voluntary prayer,
right.
In fact. You have declined to sign on, as I understand, for the federal pension that every member of Congress is entitled to. So my question is, you're not worried about your later years? I mean, you could live many more years.
This is one position that I think my wife might disagree with me on. There goes our retirement. No, you know, I was in Congress in the 70s and 80s, and I've been back, so I've had a good many years, close to 20 years. I've been in the military, so there would be a nice pension fund. But when I started in Congress the very first time in 76, it was even then more lucrative than it is now, but it's a very lucrative, very beneficial pension fund. And I could not see with me condemning you know, the system to, on the side, quietly participate in getting some very good benefits. So I just said, I'm not going to do it. I'll have to take care of myself some other way.
Should everybody else follow suit, do you think? Or
well, I think, no, I don't think we should have those kind of programs. I think citizens should be representing us in Congress, and the work should be reduced. We should cut their pay in half and let them go home and work. See, if I go home and practice medicine right now, the congressional rules say you can't practice medicine. I don't want to take the lucrative pension fund, but ironically, if I wanted to work extra on the weekend, they won't allow me because they say it's a conflict of interest for me to go home and deliver a baby. So figure that out.
And just quickly, I understand traveling around the country campaigning, you run into people you've actually delivered.
Yeah, I think that's so neat. Because the other night we had a meeting up in New Hampshire. A young lady came on. She said, "You delivered me." And I said, "Do you want me to pick you up?" Since I held you for the first time.
Is she voting for you, or do you know?
Oh, yeah, she was a strong supporter.
Congressman Ron Paul, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it.